Hello, hello, hello. Happy Thursday, and welcome back to yet another live event where we unpack passive investing and multifamily underwriting one step at a time. So, today I wanted to cover a question I have been frequently asked over the past few weeks regarding preferred equity. But before we dive in, for those who may be tuning in for the first time, my name is Vessi Kapulian, former commercial lender turned real estate investor, and today I help investors in two ways. For those eager and willing to learn how to underwrite, I have a course and community. I also do second set of eyes review on investment offerings to help investors make informed investment decisions and protect their capital. And for those looking to deploy capital, I help connect them with well vetted cash flowing investments in apartments. But let's dive straight in. So it has. In prior lives, I've mentioned that raising capital over the past couple of years has become more and more challenging for a number of reasons, but we are where we are at in terms of the cycle. So that's also a big function of it. And so, what has occurred over the past couple of years, there has been another slug within the capital stock that has come in, and that's preferred equity. And before I share my thoughts on that, which is what a lot of investors have been asking, let's just very quickly clarify what preferred equity is. It's an equity position that sits ahead of the common equity stakeholders and below the senior debt or mezz debt within the capital stack. So basically, if in a capital event, how the repayment waterfall will flow is first to the senior lender, then to the junior lender if one is present, then to the preferred equity stakeholders, and lastly to the common equity stakeholders. And so that preferred equity slug comes in, and it very much looks like, feels like, even tastes like debt, except that it's not debt, but it's equity. Typically, there is a current pay that comes attached to it, and that's you can think of it. It's not technically interest, but you can think of it as a fixed interest rate that's get paid in the current market. That's about 6%, and then there is another 7 or 8 or 9%, depending on what is being negotiated, that gets repaid on the back end for a total of anywhere from 14 to 16% overall return, and that's capped. So there are no other benefits in terms of upside. So if the deal does better, the maximum is capped at that 14 to 15% overall payout rate, with again 6% being paid out throughout. And again, preferred equity stakeholders get repaid before common equity stakeholders. So as the waterfall starts going down at each layer of the capital stack, effectively equity holders get to eat last, but they also stand to benefit more from the upside. Which then leads me to the next point, namely the question I'm asked: is it a good or bad thing? Well, it depends, right? In the current environment, having that additional slug of capital that usually comes in the form of a single check makes capital raises a lot easier. But what's important to consider is that because there is that current pay, that's almost like a mandatory pay interest rate that needs to occur, it eats away a huge chunk of the cash flow. And so it makes a deal a great deal for an equity yield type of investor, right? A passive investor who's sitting at the common equity, a stack of the table, who is ideally someone who's more patient, not necessarily leaning on cash flow as much, and then looking for the equity yield on the back end. So that would be a scenario where that may be a good thing. But if you're someone relying on cash flow, and the typical multifamily deal today, in the best case scenario, right, average cash on cash return is anywhere from 6 to 8, obviously a lot lower than 6 in the first year or two. until the asset gets stabilized and then gradually increases thereafter. So if you think about it, the average is 6 to 8. Well, 6% is the current pay to the pref equity stakeholder. A lot of that excess cash flow, right, is goes to the pref equity partner, essentially leaving nothing or almost nothing for the common equity stakeholders. So even if you have an 8% pref in the deal, that may still continue to accrue, assuming the deal is structured as such, but you will not be getting that cash flow. Some investors also like it because I treat it as quasi debt personally. So when I review deals that have pref equity, I'd like to see the overall leverage profile, including the pref equity slag. And so um, when you layer that in, often the deal becomes highly leveraged at 75, 80, maybe even 85%. And yes, in following the concept of other people's money, that increases your yield, but higher leverage profile also increases the risk. So having that higher yield is appropriate, but it also increases the risk profile of the deal. So again, is it a good or a bad thing? It really depends on your risk appetite. So if you're someone who's yield hungry, who has a higher tolerance for risk, who's willing to delay the payout towards the end of the deal, that's all great, right? Towards the exit event, that's all great. But if you're someone who wants cash flow, who's looking at cash flow as a way to mitigate the risk, who has lower tolerance for risk, wants to see lower leverage, well, in that case, a deal with a pref equity structure may not be the optimal solution for you. And last but not least, you also want to understand the history of the pref equity partner. Are they a more cooperative and team player? Are they more adversarial? There are some groups out there who would literally take over the deal, right? Those pref equity agreements come with a lot of stipulations, understandably so, right? Because they're bringing in a large single check, so they want some control of the deal. So if something was to go outside of the bounds of that agreement, they have the right to take over the decision making of the deal. And so if that's present, again, you want to know, are they going to sneeze at the first first event and take over the deal, or are they more collaborative and more patient and would be willing to work with the operator through perhaps some of the challenges that may emerge over the 5 to 7 year hold of the deal. So that's also something to consider and kind of weigh in as you figure out where that element fits within your overall risk tolerance and buy box. So I hope that helps clarify. Again, I thought I would pop in very quickly and share my thoughts since I've been getting a lot of questions around this topic. And if you'd like to be notified of future live events, you can follow me on YouTube as well as LinkedIn. Ring that bell and then you'll get notified of future events. And if you do need a second set of eyes on a deal or want to find out about the community of investors who are leveling up their underwriting skills, feel free to send me a DM on social media. And I wish you a blessed day. Ciao.